I am generic terrorist name, and we are Penguins of Heedlessness Unification Cause. We have commandeered this great studio of Conjuring the Hunt, and we will not give it back until the fuck has its demands met. Oh. What is all that noise in here? What is going on? What is... Whoa. A fucking fox in my chair. A fucking fox is in my fucking chair. I knew it was going to be a good day. Ah, crap. The fox is fucked. And hello, everybody. Welcome back to another great episode of Conjuring the Hunt. First of all, I put out a little brief description of what this podcast will be about on Rumble and YouTube. So basically it's about gun rights. And how people are trying to take it away, anti-gun people are trying to take it away from us. And we're going to address, for one, a couple of cases I know about that I've heard on the other podcast, or the podcast I listen to. Secondly, we're going to talk about exactly how they're doing it, and how they're doing it through other means besides just straight up banning gun rights. So, well, first I would like to get off this. Some big news. I have officially applied for an FFL. So that means I will become an FFL dealer. It's more for repairing and gunsmithing. Just if, I have a couple buddies who have contacted me. They know I'm good with guns and I know a lot about gun parts and all that. So they've basically asked me to, repair their guns. And obviously my reply has always been, I can't. I'm not an FFL, so I can't do that. So now if this gets approved, I will be able to repair guns for my friends and family, and I might even start a company out of it. And the name of the business I have decided will be no other than CTH Firearms, Conjuring the Hunt Firearms. I figured why not go with that, since this is kind of already a business idea of mine. So here we go. Next step into this journey. It will not change the podcast, though. It might branch it out a little bit more into more weapon knowledge, gunsmithing, and all that. And outside of the business, my family has this weekend started up its garden. Everything moved outside, and some people are like, "Oh, that's a little early." I beg to differ. Just there's ways to do it. I've looked at the weather ahead of time. We do got a couple of days that will drop below 30 degrees, which is what your average plant that you want to harvest doesn't want to drop below. But one day isn't bad, especially if you take preparations into it, making sure the heat could stay in the ground and keep the plant alive. So anyways, that's looking good and everything. Tired as hell from doing it, but we got it done. I had to rototill a lot of my yard. Not a lot, I would say. Wasn't that much. But it was an old rototiller that pulls a lot, and had to use quite a bit of strength for it. Anyways, so let's get down to this brass tactics of our gun rights. So, in the preview, I told you about how Andy from Engage Armament, he is under fire from Maryland right now, not for legal matters. It is, if it was legal matters, they would be doing it in a federal court, and he wouldn't be facing a lawsuit. He'd be facing a prison sentence. So right off the bat, we mark our boxes. Not doing it at a legal stance, wanting to do it at a lawsuit. That's already wrong, so you're already looking bad. The trumped up charges of it is straw purchases. So when filling out this FFL license, they gave me a brief description of all these things that, are illegal and everything. And straw purchases is on there. So if you have your FFL, you cannot do straw purchases. You can't do straw purchases anyways. But right there on the FFL, it lists that. And a straw purchase is basically you sell to someone who knowingly is going to just resell it to someone else without a proper paperwork or something like that. So here's the thing. I've bought several guns, and I've filled out the paperwork to do these guns. Right on there, it asks the buyer, are you planning on selling this gun after you buy it? You have a yes and no box. If that person marks no, then how's the gun owner or the gun dealer gonna know that he doesn't plan on selling it after he buys it? There's also a box containing, do you use illicit drugs? Do you have a mental deficit? It lists all the things that can deny you for a gun. You mark no, 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 no. And here's the other thing. The guy that bought the gun had a firearms permit. He had a purchase permit. Not only that, he had a collector's permit. Tell me something. Why is this one gun shop owner in trouble when he went to his local law enforcement officer, and I'm pretty sure you have to go to the ATF to get the collector's permit? So you went to all those. They cleared this guy that was doing this illegal actress, this Demetrius Minor, and they said, hey, you're good to go. But yet this gun store sells him a gun, and all of a sudden Maryland's like, whoa! To me, if you want to go after someone, you should go after someone who gave him both those permits. Because both those permits, when I buy a gun, I go in, I hand the guy my permit, I fill out my paperwork. The background check's already been done through the permit. The local police and the ATF have already done their background search on that person. So that means it's clear. Once he has that permit, he's clear. That makes no sense to me how you can punish this guy and not go after the people who cleared this Demetrius Martin or Minor for a permit. So right there, red flags all over this. The other thing is how Maryland is suing him. They classified this lawsuit as I just drew a blank on it. Right, dangerous to DC life lawsuit. So he's getting sued for not endangering Maryland's life, and he's going after the DC life. Evidently, he's a dangerous to DC life by selling these guns. So we got a bogus title for a lawsuit, bogus definition of it, a bogus reason to sue, and the wrong person to sue. 3 wrongs right now already, and not looking good for Maryland's favor. Looking good for Andy's favor, in fact. Fourth thing, the amount of money they are suing Andy and Engage Armament for. $17 million. You know what that tells me right there? They're just going after him to put him out of business. They are trying to bankrupt this guy. Prior charges not charges, he was accused of something basically he defended his gun shop. We'll go to there with that. So he defended his gun shop, I think half a year earlier or something like that. Or no, it wasn't even that. It was longer than that. A year earlier. Ended up having to go to jail and sit out this time for defending his gun shop because the whole details, you can go over to Andy's site, Andy's gun shop, listen to any of these podcasts. These events have been preached out before. Not really preached out, but told out before. I ain't going to say preached. Because the last thing I want to do is label this as preaching, because Andy really needs all of our support here. In fact, any gun store going through this needs our support here. So he ended up in jail, I believe it was for a little over a year, for defending his gun shop. Eventually was acquitted of the crimes. They're like, this isn't a crime, this was self-defense. But along that way, he had to pay for his own defense in this area. So he's already spent money there. And now Maryland is like, since Maryland didn't win, they're vindictive about it. They're like, we're going to get you somehow. Boom, we got away. Bankrupt you. And this is how a lot of I'm just going to say anti-gun organizations are working. They aren't going after our gun rights directly. They're going after our way of making money and sustaining our gun shops and our ability to have these weapons. And the they're kind of getting away with it. They're doing it because I ended up doing a lot of research, and I found out there's been about like 20 different gun shops, 5 different manufacturers that have had to do something or pay a lot of money to these people because they are, they're going after the money and everything. So when you go after someone's like, we'll throw Andy in this. That's his source of income. That's how he feeds his family. That's his business. That is a mom and pop store by definition. He started it from the ground up. And so you are going after a man's livelihood at this point. Yeah, it may not be the livelihood you had intended for it, but there's a lot worse livelihoods out there. Another thing, banks. Banks are buying out these little small town banks, because it's like big New Yorker banks are coming in, or California banks, that's actually the more prevalent area for it, are coming in and buying these small branches and turning them into their branches in these small rural areas and these small conservative areas. So they're buying these, and then they're basically telling these gun shop owners, they're holding their money and saying that this is dirty money. That's illegal for one. So, and there's several incidences where people have actually have paperwork to show this. In fact, there was one of the guys that I listened to. He turned into his finances in guns into crypto. So that's how he's doing all of his money is through crypto now. And the reason is because I believe he was based out of Illinois. And so obviously we know Illinois, terrible gun laws. Really, really heavy on being anti-gun. So they're taking all these gun laws and they're amplifying it, and they're saying like, hey, that's dirty money. You can't sell it here. So he turned it into crypto because the bank that he was going through ended up getting bought out by one of these bigger banks that didn't want guns through. Well, after like weeks and months of battling with them to get his money that they held from him after they closed his account, then he finally actually messaged one of them, and he was like, hey, we're going to talk about this in person. I've got a flight coming to your bank. And it was a New York bank at this time. I remember him saying that now. He's like, I'm coming to New York. We're going to talk this out face to face. He said, and he showed the transactions and everything within hours. That bank manager was like, well, nope, here's your money. And it was the sum of $336,000. Yeah, the guy said that was it was bigger count, but he had another accounts through smaller banks because he feared this process in this new up-and-coming age of gun rights battles. He said, luckily, I had planned ahead. I had more money stashed in other banks that didn't get bought out, so he was able to sustain himself. But let's go with like your average Joe, small-town Nebraska gun dealer who probably doesn't have that much money, who probably doesn't sell that many, sells a gun, maybe like 10 guns a week, so 10, comes out to, we'll say the average gun is around $400, $500. We'll go 400. 10 times 400, 4,000. So $4,000 a week. Not bad, but once you take out the count of all the stuff you have to, the basically the financing of the place, the paying the shippers, the manufacturers, and getting new inventory in for it, it's not that big of a chip. I like to refer it as there's a lot of money in it if you're in a big area and a lot of need for it, but we're saying if you're in a town of like 1,000 people, which is a lot of Nebraska towns, you're probably only making about $4,000 a week. Bigger town, you're obviously going to be making more, but so you only make $4,000 a week after you pay everything, rent or lease or whatever you're going through. Maybe you own the build, maybe you're paying off the mortgage to the building or the loan to the building. After that, you're sitting with a couple, $100 to feed your family, go. That's why a lot of these gun store owners, it's their second job. That's why a lot of them tend to have another job that's their main job, and they do this one as like a side hobby job to make a little money off of it. So that's great. But we take away that money, say it's one guy's sole job. You take away that money, he can't feed his family. He can't do any of that. You're basically crippling a guy. Crippling him financially. So, I mean, that's one way they're getting at us for our money is with banks and all that. The other way is banning accessories or putting stupid tax stamps on accessories. And this comes down to we all know the big one that is talked about, but there's several others too. But your suppressors, because you need a class 3 license for a suppressor that comes with a huge tax stamp on it. Not huge, I guess, but $200. That's ridiculous. So and most of your suppressors aren't cheap. Yankee Hill's probably the cheapest, and they range from $200 to $500, if that. So I mean, they're going to be a little expensive. So we'll say mid-grade 350, put 250 or $200 for that. You're paying $500 for an accessory on it. And I know a lot of people out there are like, "Oh, that's not that bad. That's not that bad." If you're a middle class man trying to buy accessories or have a hobby of firearms, they're making it impossible. Because most of your money or all your money is basically trying to go in there. So if on a lucky day you'll get something like that. They're trying to make it so basically the rich are the only ones that have it, it seems like. But then we turn around and look at AR pistols. And totally banning those, or totally putting those are under class 3 as well. So putting those under a class 3 license needs another tax stamp. So AR pistol, you buy a good one, it's going to be from $700 to $1,000. That's an extra $1,200 coming out of your pocket once you have the tax stamp onto it. Another ones is these. Another one that actually will take the. What am I trying to say? I can't even think right now. Another one that'll take the financial or put financial stress on a simple, we'll put it this way: single mom who's got her buyer's permit, trying to buy a self-defense weapon, a handgun. We all know the prices of handguns. They get pretty expensive. I mean, every once in a while, I look for good deals, so I usually get great deals on my guns. But also I'm willing to look at used guns, that a dealer's selling or something like that. Because if they are a little shoddy or a little broke, I can fix my own guns. Without an FFL, I can fix my own guns. I just can't fix anyone else's. So I can do that myself. But a single mom, she ain't gonna know that about much about guns or anything like that. I'm not trying to target out. There's probably some single moms that actually do know how to do that, but I'm gonna say on an average, we'll say. And so they ain't gonna have the equipment or anything like that. So they're probably gonna be looking to buy a newer gun that's brand new, nothing wrong with it, and probably a good brand too. So like Smith and Wesson, or Sig Sauer or something along those lines. FN, So those guns, the cheapest one I've found is around, we'll say $400. So $400, that's a pretty big chunk of a single mom's check, right? But there are these other brands. I mean, I wouldn't buy them, but for good small, for good single moms who only want to use it for self-defense, they're probably great for it. So they're taking these cheaper guns like Phoenix Arms and all this, and they're banning them. They're straight up saying it's too cheap, they're not reliable and everything. But here's the thing, if they can get off 5 shots to a single mom who just wants self-defense, they're reliable probably. I get it. That doesn't seem very reliable to someone like me. So I look for, I want to get 500 shots off before I have a malfunction. But I mean, I'm a very active, range shooter, and I go out and practice with my guns. I couldn't put a time on it, but it's quite a bit. So, and I like to shoot, and that's why I reload my own ammo, is because that's another thing they're doing. They're creating ammo shortages or putting prices on ammo, or making these manufacturers sell the ammo for really expensive. And I know it was just lifted, but there for a while, you weren't allowed to buy a certain amount of ammo because of this. So we'll say I obviously have an AR-15. So I go out and I shoot that quite a bit. It's just, I like shooting it. It's a good like stress reliever for me, and it just puts me in my Zen mode basically. So for a while, you could only buy I think 2 or 3 boxes at a time from a manufacturer, or from like Cabela's or Bass Pro or something like that. They've lifted that, and you can buy as much as you want now. But that was just one of the ways. And you know what the struggle, how big of a struggle it was for us to actually get that lifted? There was court cases over it. They had to show basically that it's unnecessary to have this, that it doesn't matter how much the ammo the person has. There's always going to be ways to get ammo if you're doing it illegally. There's always going to be ways to get guns if you're doing it illegally. So taking away your rights of your law-abiding citizens who want to do everything legally, what are you doing there besides saying, hey, you can't defend yourself? No, what they're doing is making it so they can control you more. Simple as that. Your ammo bans, your ammo shortages, your accessory taxes, and certain firearms not being allowed, all that is just bans, because those are things that can help you actually defend yourself if the government was to try and do a full takeover. That's my state on it. I've even watched several other videos on it. There was this one great video on YouTube I actually watched last night. It was the 10 top 10 guns that the government has banned or is trying to ban because, it makes it easier for you to defend yourself. And it's not that they think you're a menace to society or anything like that. It's they know if it came down to taking guns, because a well-armed society is a well-armed society, and they are well protected. Their government can't really, march in and do it. Obviously, there's ways they can do it. And by all means, I'm a fan of I'm a fan of parts of our government and everything, but there's certain like state legislations and all that just baffle me on how like anti-gun they are. Maryland's one of them. Like even our own ATF has made statements about, how radical some of these government branches are. Obviously, they're not going to be speak out against them because they work for the government too. But it's just crazy how, like, I'll put it this way. There is a shotgun out there that is a pump shotgun, right? And since it's a pump, even Joe Biden himself said the only thing you need to defend your house is a pump 12 gauge shotgun. All right. Well, they took that and they put a clip in it, and now all of a sudden, it's a dangerous weapon. Dangerous weapon. Right there. How is that any different? It is literally because it gives you a better defense against, I can't even talk right now. Tyranny. There you go, tyranny. That's what the word I'm looking for is. So they basically took a 12 gauge shotgun, a pump still, not semi-automatic, simple pump, added a clip, and that is on the list of potential bans in this upcoming year. Baffles me right there because it's literally the same thing. Here's the other thing. Lever actions. Lever actions have been used since the Civil War, right? Never has the government ever been, they're dangerous weapons. They're like, that could be used for hunting too. All of a sudden, we're getting these lever actions with all this fancy modernized stuff, with the rail systems on it, better sights on it. Those are now target for ban too. Because apparently when you put a rail and a synthetic stock on it, that makes it more dangerous than its counterpart with a wooden stock and a fucking iron sights. It doesn't. You know what it does? It makes it better for hunting. Simple as that. It just surprises me. The other one is semi-automatic shotguns, right? This is also another target ban. Certain semi-automatics are target for bans. So, semi-automatic shotguns, I can't remember the day they came out. They've been out for a while, though. And, you just pull the trigger, let go, pull the trigger, let go, pull the trigger, let go. It's not hold the trigger and it goes da 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 da. It's boom, let go, boom, let go, boom, let go. Okay, well, now that they're making them in AR and bullpup forms, the government is freaking out about these, even though it is the same exact goddamn thing. Everyone's like, oh, they hold more. They hold more. Okay, here's something for you. Most magazines for these shotguns only hold 5 rounds. Yeah, you can buy bigger rounds, but you can also buy a longer tube for your semi-automatic shotgun that holds more. That wasn't a problem. I know of tubes that can hold 10 shots in them. I actually think the biggest one I've seen is 12. That's about what the longer mags for these are. So what is the difference? The fact that they look scary? No, the fact that it is better for defense. That is primarily it. The Street Sweeper. This is the one. Street Sweeper's been banned. So it's a shotgun, basically hold this, and it's like a cylinder, right? You pull the trigger, you let go, the cylinder moves. It's just like like a revolver, you know? That's been banned and listed as a destructive weapon. Why? No one knows. Because literally, you have rifles that do the same thing that are cylinder-fired rifles, but they aren't banned. No, it's because these things are used for self-defense. And when I say self-defense, I'm talking about burglaries, murderers, any of those illegal ones. But I'm also talking about tyranny. People that come to take your rights away from you. They don't want you to be able to defend your rights when they come. Just going to say that now. But like I said, there are certain branches and certain people in the government that will defend your rights. And thank God for them, because they are our last line before they come after us. High round, or not high round, large capacity magazines. Yeah, you don't use them for hunting, but they are sporting, I will say. They are hobbies. So I'm going to bring this out. It's always a huge topic. So one of the big things that they are after is AR-15s and AR-15 pistols. I get it, I don't get it. I will say that I do not get it. I guess they're used in combat. Yes, that is true. But what if, we'll say, for heaven forbid, what if all of our rights are taken away, and we'll say reincarnated Hitler comes knocking on all of our doors, starts doing internment camps, starts doing death camps and all that? How are we going to defend ourselves if one side has that and we have single shots? If we have bolt actions? It's like, oh, you could defend yourself that way. No, you can't. Because a lot of these ARs are, they got at least 25 or 20 to 30 round magazines. So they're coming at us with that, and we're going boom, boom, and in close quarters. This is one thing that I really... So if it comes down to that, in close quarters, which would you rather have? One that you could put a couple rounds out, or one that, is designed for long range, not close quarters? The Second Amendment wasn't in there for hunting. The Second Amendment is not in there for hunting. The Second Amendment was designed because we were just getting in war with a tyrannical king, the King of England, right? Controlling the shit out of us, even taxing every little bit of us. We put that amendment there so that the future generations could defend themselves. And that's why I love, the Second Amendment, it's only for hunting. You can't hunt with AR. The Second Amendment isn't for hunting. Literally, it is for tyranny. That is why the Second Amendment is there. The right to quarter is also in there for tyranny purposes, because that is the things that were going on during the Revolutionary War. And everyone's like, well, they had ball and muskets. Yeah, and that's all we had too. We matched side for side, but they realized that we have the exact same, so they're like, you can't have that. No guns, and we can quarter ourselves in your building. So if one side has it, the other side should have it. That's what the Second Amendment means, basically. But no one looks at it that way. They look at it as, you all are gun nuts, gun crazy guys who, thrive on death. No, we don't. I know probably over 100 people, that who have AR-15s. None of them. Outside of, I'm going to pause, outside of the military, and I still don't even know if they have killed anyone with them. All right? None of them have shot anyone with them. You know what most of them use them for? Coyote hunting. Target practicing. That's it. They ain't going around the street going, I like death, I like death. No. We are America, not some, foreign country, who lets their citizens run out and, pa 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 pa. I've been to places like that, And the reason those people do that is because their government had tried these things that you're trying, has tried to control these people, and they ended up creating these monsters. But a well-armed society is a protected society. Simple as that. So anyways, you got all these initiatives to take away guns and everything on all this. And I hope people are opening their eyes to all this, because it is crazy what is going on right now. And, to the average day person who isn't like checking up on legislation or anything like that, they have no clue this is going on. Because I guarantee most of my Nebraska people who, don't listen to any of the Firearms Network radio don't know any of this is going on. So yeah. I don't know what to say to that. But just do some research into it. Look into it, and you'll see it. I honestly, myself, I thought we were pretty good with where we stand with guns and everything. And then I started realizing a trend that was going on with taxation of certain parts, these saying, oh, this part's, you can't have this part because it's banned. I started noticing a trend of it, so I started looking into it. It is not our fathers and our grandfathers' day and age with guns anymore. Where I can remember my dad saying, oh, they're coming after our guns, and they weren't really. It was, they had ideas about it and everything of trying these legislations. It has moved to the point where most of them, there is legislation out there that is against guns, but most of them, they're not doing it through legislation. They are literally coming after guns through any other means necessary. And some of them almost honestly don't seem like the legalist, like the Maryland case. That really doesn't seem legal. Because if he had committed straw purchases, why not try him in federal court? You want to know why they didn't? Because in federal court, they would have looked at him and like, seriously? Get out of here. Dismissed. And honestly, that's where this lawsuit is more than likely heading. Because it sounds like basically the judge is looking at Maryland going, all right, you vindictive asshole. Why are you doing this? So he's probably going to get off of that. Thank God for Andy. But still, turn around. Go support Andy. Support any pro-gun movement out there, please. And just help us all out. There's foundations you can donate to. There's foundations that, like lawyers that, like firearm specific lawyers that go around helping these people like Andy. If you go to the Firearms Network, there's this awesome podcast on there. I listen to it religiously. It is called Guns, or What's Happening in Guns, or no, Gun. I can't remember the name of it. I'm put on the spot. I think it's like Guns Weekly, or What's Happening in Guns, or This Week in Guns. That's what it is. This Week in Guns. Wow. Took me a while. Had to walk around the block 3 times to get that. But yes, it's called This Week in Guns. And it literally has 2 firearm attorneys on there talking about all the legislation going on with guns and everything. And there's some things that are at the federal court right now that aren't public. They're public knowledge, but they're kind of hidden public knowledge. You got to do some digging before you can actually get into it. So, brush up on that, I would say. And because even with hunting wise, there's certain things that they're trying to come after, like firearms, like bolt action wise and everything, that you can't do. And it's just like, why? Freaking why? I literally think that there's some parts of our government that want our society to be completely brain dead gnolls without guns, not defending themselves. And then there's a very small some that are actually standing up for us and our rights. And that's the biggest thing. We have rights, everyone. And a lot of people, to me, I like my rights. The less government involvement, freaking awesome. I don't want government like funding or government help financially. I don't want any sort of government entity in my life. I want to be myself, defend for myself, feed myself, make money for myself, to be self-sufficient as possible without the government at all. And there's a large part of our country is the exact opposite of that. They're like, well, the government's here. Why aren't they helping us? Why do you need them to help you? Why? Do it yourself. That's, I just, sometimes I don't get people like that. And there's a massive movement that wants more government control. I shouldn't say government control. They want government aid. Well, do you know what government aid is? That's government control. That's government being able to say, oh, we have you on this aid now. Well, we're going to dial you back a little bit so you can stay within our parameters and everything. My dad, he is, he's in the far right loony bin. I ain't going to say loony bin. I don't do that to the old man. But he has some conspiracy theories out there that are just mind-blowing. And, growing up, I had to listen to all these. There's some that he has said that it's coming true. And I'm like, what? No, that shouldn't come true. I remember rolling my eyes when he told me that. What is going on? And there's obviously some that haven't come true, and I'm guessing will never come true. We won't get into that. So he's always been, that type of guy. Love him to death, but he is a little paranoid about the government. And I guess he had somewhat of a reason to be, because it is baffling to hear all these stories. And once I really dove into this, because once I heard about Andy's case, I was like, what else is going on? What else do I need to look into? And I started looking into it, and a lot of it, and people may hate me for this, I don't really care, because clearly you're not the fans I'm trying to get. No offense. But a lot of it is coming from the massive, depressing migration from California. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It's already affected Colorado real bad. It's hitting Idaho. It's hitting Wyoming. It's hitting Montana. It's even going down to Texas. All right. It's these people who are, who grew up in a government system, who had government aid their whole entire life, thinking that's what the normal should be. Because that's what California has done. It has aided people so bad that they are reliant on the government. That is not good at all. Not good. And they're so reliant that look at Skid Row down there. I think it's called Skid Row. It is the most homeless, has the most homeless people out there. There's literally tents lining the road. Homeless people up left and right, drug addicts and everything. And it is just terrible. It is dirtily terrible. And then everyone's like, oh, why California get so bad? Why Los Angeles, the heart of Los Angeles, why does it look like a shithole? Why is San Francisco starting to turn into a pigsty? Because your government is helping out all these people on the street. They're giving them money. That's why. And I'm not saying they're paying them to be there, but they all get on these programs like welfare and all this. Don't get me wrong. I do think there's scenarios where welfare and Social Security and all that belong. But if you're an average day American who just doesn't want to work and wants to do drugs all day, you don't belong on welfare or Social Security. You belong, well, I ain't going to say where you belong, but there's places where you belong. Those type of government aid are great for people who actually need them. Sick, elderly, people who can't basically work. Drug addicts can work. They just choose not to. They choose to fucking stick a needle in their arm or smoke a crack pipe. That's all that is. And everyone's like, oh, addiction's a sickness. You know, okay, I don't recall. I mean, this is going to be a debate, and everyone might hate me for it, because I am also topsy-turvy honest. It might be a sickness. But I don't recall people going out and like, I'm purposely going to get influenza. I'm purposely going to get, freaking herpes. I'm purposely going to get AIDS. Sounds like a good idea. No, but that's what these drug addicts are doing. They had a choice to fucking, smoke that crack pipe for the first time, snort that line for the first time, do all this stuff for the first time. And then they have a choice after it to get off of it, to stop doing it, or not doing it as frequently. And everyone's like, oh, there's traumas in people's life. Yeah, you know what? I had some traumas too. Mine's called PTSD. Do you know how I took care of my trauma? I found a hobby that released my PTSD and my stress and all that, which happened to be shooting firearms and working on firearms. But, so besides all that, it's kind of just look into all these things, all these corrupt things that are going on with our government towards firearms, or with our financial core and with firearms, like Banking Wise or something like that, or even these side organizations that are, anti-gun this and, fucking guns kill. Guns kill. Guns don't kill. People kill. That's the simplest fact is that. And we will never stop people from killing. Because let's look at history. Before guns were invented, did people kill? Everyone's like, well, they never killed at this such a high level. Bullshit. Go back to ancient Egypt. The pharaohs were killing Jews left and right for not working. How do you think they did that? You think that back then they had, this AR and they just lined them up, pop, pop, pop? No. They used knives and swords. So pretty soon, are we going to ban this too? It's a box cutter, That's capable of killing someone. Should we ban that? I seen the Joker kill a guy with this on a movie. Should we ban that? Hell, I can pick up any object in here, and it could probably kill someone if I used it right. But the thing is, that's not what it was designed for. And that's what everyone's like, the gun was designed for that. The gun wasn't designed for that. The gun first originated as a hunting tool. That's what it was designed for. Then it transferred into a defense tool. That's what it was designed for. It is not a killing tool. A killing tool would be like your guillotine or something like that. That was strictly designed for killing people, chopping their heads off. In fact, a sword, those aren't banned. Those are strictly designed for killing people. But anyways, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope it was very kind of informational. Please go out and support all your local pro-gun movements, pro-gun legislation, and any of your local gun shops that are trying to, combat these new up-and-coming bans and these new legislations and all these people coming after them and their money. Be wary of it. Just look into it. And that's all I have for now. So I hope you guys have a good night. I enjoyed the show. You guys have a good one.